Okay, some XML elements, okay, which are used to define the schema are exposed in this URL. Okay, we will import them into our XSD file using the namespace, and the components or the HTML elements that are used to define the schema can be used using the prefix XSD. So XSD colon element is used to define a XML element using the schema. Okay, how the structure should be using the schema. And complex types refer that. Okay, complex type is used to define, okay, a child element or a attribute inside a element. See, if the attribute, if the element directly contains another element like this, or let's consider like this too. Okay, let's consider like this too. Then what do we do means, let's consider like mail contains 2 and 2 contains some email address which is a string. Now mail should have a complex type just because it contains some child elements. If a tag has XML element is supposed to have a child element or a attribute, then definitely we should define a complex type in that. In that complex type, then we should define all the elements. I have defined the first element, second element. I have defined 2 elements. First element is ID and second element is from. Okay, and then what I have done in the complex type, I have mentioned a sequence. Okay, this sequence tells that all these elements present in this complex type should occur as a sequence. Okay, that means first ID should be there and then from should be there. In the generated XML document, first ID should be there and then from should be there. Okay, this tells us these XML elements, these child elements. Okay, and then in the mail, ID and from should be there. And they should be as a sequence. Okay, and then what I have done, in from this ID is of type integer. There are several data types. Okay, if you see the data types here, there are several data types. Okay, decimal, date time, double, duration, date, byte, boolean. Like this, we have very specific data types for a specific data. In case of DTD, we don't have such specific data types. We have only C data, PC data, parts character data or character data. Okay. Other than that, we don't have any specific data types like this. Okay, short, string, time, token. Okay, all these are data types. Okay, all these are specific data types. Like in Java, we have boolean, byte, short, int. Okay, like that. In the same way, we have specific data types here. Now I'm making this as an integer. Okay, just in Eclipse, go for some content and enter control space. Okay, so we get all the values starting with that. This is called as control assist. Already we have discussed this in earlier classes in Eclipse. We call this as control assist. Okay, just Eclipse will assist you when you type something and enter control space. Eclipse will assist you, like what are the possible values starting with that. Just and then now from has 2 child elements. One is name, another is mobile. Okay, so from has 2 child elements. One is name, another is mobile, which are there in a sequence. Okay, then Other than sequence, we can have even all also. All tells that in any order. Okay, all means in any order. Either first name can come or first mobile can come. Okay, all means in any order. Sequence means it should be in a particular sequence. If it is a sequence, then they should exist in the same order. Now in this XML document, first the root tag is mail, and mail can have two child tags, ID and from, okay, which are in the same order in a sequence, and then from can have two child elements, name which is of type string and mobile which is of type integer, and those can be in any order. That's what I have defined using this XSD. And we can specify a default value. What is the default value for name? By using the default attribute. Just observe this, what we are doing. You can only do afterwards. Okay, even by seeing the videos you can learn, but just observe what we are doing. Okay, just we can specify a default value for element by using the default attribute. Okay, and even we can tell that what is the fixed value. Then we cannot change the value. If it is fixed means we cannot change the value. Okay, that's what fixed is. All these things we have achieved even in DTD. A required or default or fixed, all these things we have achieved in DTD. But what is the difference is, it's very structural. We can define some user defined components and we can leverage the definition. Okay, it's not like in case of DTD the definition is very complex and it is very hard to understand. Okay, but here even this is also XML, so those who have the basic knowledge of XML can understand this. Okay, and it provides more facilities. Facilities in the sense we can define in a more granular way. Okay, and there comes the advantage of XSDs. Nowadays, for new applications, let's consider like for the applications that are created after 2010, like that. No one is using DTDs. Everyone is using XSDs only. So you should have knowledge how the XSD will work in the backend. Okay. And even we can define attributes also. Here the required attribute can be specified using use. Use equal to optional means it is optional. Okay, it may be it may exist or may not exist. Use equal to required means it should exist. Okay. Likewise, we can specify the properties of an attribute in an XML document. Fix the same thing. What is the default value? Already we have seen. Okay. But we should not specify the both. Okay. Just if it is required means see the property default is present in attribute test. So set the value of use must be optional. Okay. In DTD also we have seen this. Okay. Either of them can be used. Either we can make it as a mandatory attribute using required, or we can specify a default value. If it is a mandatory attribute by using required, we cannot specify a default value that we have seen even in the DTD. Even in the XSD also it is the same. If the default value is specified, then use should be optional. It should not be required. Use equal to required means the XML component or XML element should provide a value for that as attribute. But use equal to optional means it may or may not provide, but the default value is true. Understood? Like that it will be. And then now from has the attribute test whose default value is true, but we are overriding with false. So which one you could able to better connect, or which one you could able to better understand? Is it a DTD or is it a XSD? Which one you could able to better connect, or which one you could able to better understand? Is it the DTD or is it the XSD? XSD is more granular and you can understand it better. But okay, the document wise, for achieving the same thing, we need to go for a lengthy process in XSD. See, the same thing can be achieved in DTD very simply, writing a mail tag with from to subject and body. But to achieve the same thing, okay, we need to write a long complex type, sequence, element, all these things in XSD. But even it is lengthy process, or even it contains more data in the XSD file, XSD is always advisable. Okay, it is a one-time job, and no one will create XSD like we create. If we are creating the XSD manually, okay, through some XML document, but no one will create like this. In case of Eclipse, we have a UI to create XSDs. Like this is a mail contains some ID from, and ID contains attribute of ID should contain integer, and from should contain, okay, some value, and just I am inserting a CC which is of type string. Let me make it as a string only. So I have inserted another element CC which is of type string. So in the source it will be reflected. So we need not to develop these things. No one will develop these things manually through coding. Just we'll use GUI tools for that. GUI means, I think you know that better, graphical user interface. Okay. Other than Eclipse, even we have several GUI tools. We need not to have Eclipse for doing this. We have Alto XML Spy. This is one of the external setup file. One of the external product. We need to have Eclipse to to create XSD or to create a XML document. And there is another thing also, some liquid XML editor. All these XML editors, either Altovo XML Spy or Liquid XML editor. There are several products, sir. There are hundreds of products in the market. Just I know only a couple of things, so I'm telling only this. That doesn't mean that these are the best tools. These are the tools that I know. There are hundreds of XML editors in the market, okay? But some of them are Altovo XML Spy and Liquid XML editor and all. Okay? See, we need not to have a Eclipse to define all these things. Since already Eclipse is there, I'm using Eclipse to define all these things. But if we do, if our purpose is just to create a XSD, we need not to go for Eclipse. We can create them using some one of these, Altovo XML Spy or Liquid XML editor or any of the XML editors. There are several XML editors available in the market. Okay. There is attribute mixed. Okay. By default, the mixed value is false. If you make mixed value is true. Okay. Mixed means it should have a mixture of any character. Like it can have tags, it can have data, or it can have anything. By default, mixed is false. Now, what is the difference between mix equal to false and mix equal to true means? Let's consider like CC. CC contains some XML elements. Let's consider like we have another element description. Okay. Now the description can have okay. The description can have anything. Like let's consider like I'm writing some HTML content here. Bold, italic. In bold and italic I am writing, okay, this is a test description. But is that possible with a normal XML tag? Is this content possible with a normal XML component or with a normal XML element? No, just because the content of normal XML element, okay, the content of the normal XML element should not have all these things, less than, greater than, okay, single quote, double quote, and all these things. But by default, it will be a normal XML component where mixed content is not allowed. But if mix is equal to true means, for complex type, if mix is equal to true, then along or across that element, okay, we can have, okay, some characters that are there with entity references, some special characters. The characters that are considered special to be XML can be written in a XML tag, okay, if there is mix is equal to true. So these kind of characters, less than or greater than or single quote or double quote, these kind of characters cannot be written if mix is equal to false. So to make them allowed, we make mix equal to true. By making mix equal to true, we are specifying that this XML element can have mixed content. Okay, either say a flat character data or even some tags. Understood? Now already we have discussed how the min occurs and max occurs will work. Okay, and the default values will be 1. If you don't specify min occurs and max occurs, the default value will be 1. If you don't specify any value for min occurs or max occurs, the default value for both will be 1. Min occurs will be 1 and max occurs will be 1. So every element that is defined in the XSD should occur at least once by default, but we can make it 0 even. Okay, these are the basic things about the XSDs, how the XSDs will be defined in the backend, and no one will develop XSDs through the application, through coding. Most of them will use the GUIs, graphical user interfaces, so that we can add the elements or attributes very easily. Okay, that's how it will be. And topic of our priority is today is Hibernate. To start with Hibernate, so we'll be starting with Hibernate. Okay, if anybody wants, but it will be available, okay, in the videos, so you can refer the video, you can pause the video and you can note it down if you want. Okay, so we'll start with Hibernate rather than wasting the time. Okay, basically this Hibernate is a framework. Let's consider like from main gate to south campus it is 3 kilometers. Okay. Now, if you go on foot, okay, how much time it may take? Let's consider like take 1.5 hours from main gate to south campus. Now, if you use a bike, what happens? The time will be reduced. Okay, it will be more flexible for us. Okay, it will be more flexible for us. Okay, there are several advantages of using bike. Okay, we can go for any number of times within a day. We can save the time and we can save the energy. We can do many things. The same thing can be done. We can compare the same thing, okay, with JDBC and Hibernate. If you use JDBC, why? All of you know. Did you get at least the basics of JDBC? As I told earlier, as I told in the previous class, what is JDBC and why it is used and how it is used? Basically, this JDBC is a part of the JDK software where it has a set of entities where we use them to interact with the database. Okay, JDBC has a set of entities, classes and interfaces and enums, where we can use those entities to interact with the database. Okay, and if you use JDBC, okay, we are using JDBC to perform a database interaction. Okay, then we should write the SQL queries in the application itself. Okay, if I show you the JDBC applications that we have developed earlier, this was one of the JDBC applications that we have developed. Okay, see what JDBC will do means it will be used to connect a Java application to a database. Okay, from day to day life we do several things with the database. Let's consider like Google. Okay, if we type something, let's consider like if I type Facebook in Google search box, then it will display the website of the Facebook. Then all that information will be present in the database. Let's consider like I have entered my username and password in Gmail and click on submit. Your username and password will be verified against the values that exist in the database. So for any database application, interaction with database is must and sure. But how a Java application interacts with the database means in earlier days, even in current days. In earlier days as well as even in current days, okay, JDBC can be used to interact with the database. It's not like JDBC is not at all used nowadays. Even nowadays, JDBC is extensively used. Okay, we can use JDBC to interact with the database. Even now, JDBC was developed a very long back, but it is robust enough. It's robust enough so that robust means it's very what we call it's very standardized. Okay, it is very enough standardized so that it can be used even for next 20 years perfectly to interact with the database. Okay, it's very standardized. JDBC is very standardized way of database interactions. But okay, already there is a JDBC which is inbuilt in Java software, okay, to interact with the database. Okay, by using JDBC we can interact with any database. Okay, we can perform any number of transactions. Okay, we can do anything. We can perform any database interactions like store procedures, store functions. Okay, we can interact with any of the database objects using JDBC. But why we should go for Hibernate if there is some existing robust or existing standard way of interacting with the database? Okay, there are several things. Okay, several advantages as well as disadvantages with Hibernate. We'll list out one by one. Okay, Hibernate is a framework. Okay, what a machine will do means a machine will reduce the human effort. In the same way, Hibernate or any kind of framework, Hibernate is also one of the frameworks. Okay, we have several other frameworks like Struts, Spring, JSF, MyBadges. Like this, we have several frameworks. Okay, what a framework will do means framework will be like a machine. What the machine will do, machine will reduce the human effort. In the same way, framework will reduce the developer effort. Okay, framework will do nothing. Framework will use the existing robust mechanism and will make the developer and will reduce the developer effort to achieve the things. See, even a framework will make use of the existing core things only, existing robust mechanisms only. Let's consider like Hibernate. Hibernate will use JDBC itself. Hibernate internally it will use JDBC itself. Or Spring or Struts or JSF or MyBadges, they will internally use Java coding itself. Java codings and Java specific configurations itself. But what they will do means rather than we doing all those things, rather than we developing all those things, a framework will already develop those things for you and will give you a mechanism where we can configure the things. Okay, Hibernate or any other framework will internally use the core things only, the robust or standard ways only. Let's consider like Hibernate. It's a framework which is used to interact with the database. But even JDBC is also used for interacting with the database, which is already standardized and which is robust, which has proven very good. But what Hibernate will do means, in order to interact with the database, there are several steps. If you want to interact with the database or if you want to manage the database transactions, there are several steps that we need to do. Rather than we doing them, Hibernate will do that backend and Hibernate on the front end. On the front end, Hibernate will provide a configuration mechanism where we can configure the things. If you want, we can plug in. If you don't want, we can plug out very easily. But if you want to do the same backend, let's consider like if you want to plug in something, okay, then if you plug in something, Hibernate will generate some backend JDBC code. Let's consider like if you want to plug out that, just I will remove the configuration. That's it. So, but if you want to do the same thing using JDBC, if you want to plug in something, I need to write several code. If I want to plug out something, I need to remove several code. I need to remove much code. So this manual effort for the developer will be reduced if you use frameworks. Understood? And whatever the framework it might be, it will be using. Let's consider like whatever the database framework it might be, either Hibernate or MyBasis or X or Y or Z. Internally, it will use JDBC only. But it will make the developer life so easy that we can configure the things rather than we developing the things. Hibernate will develop the things in the backend scenes. Okay, in the backend scenes, Hibernate will develop the things, but it will provide us a way of configuring the things. We need to just configure the things. The rest of the things will be taken by the Hibernate system. That's the advantage of any framework. Not even Hibernate, any framework. Okay, any framework will make the developer's life easy and will provide a way of configuration of the things. Okay, we can achieve very complex things very simple by using very simple configurations. Let's consider like managing the transaction. Okay, maintaining the cache. Okay, there are several other complex things where we need to write hundreds of lines of code to achieve them. But the same thing, the same code is already written by Hibernate in a very perfect manner. See, while there are 100 developers, we cannot expect all the 100 developers to have the same standard. Okay, let's consider like an underperforming developer has assigned the task to manage the cache. Then he may or may not write that code in a very perfect way, in a best way. But already Hibernate people have written that code in a very perfect way, in a best performing manner, and they have provided to us. So generally people tend, rather than taking a risk of dependency on developers or risk on underperforming developers, they will depend upon frameworks, so that the framework will be the same, but the configuration will be just, the developer should know just the configuration things. Understood? Like that it will be, like that the framework will be. Then how and the basic advantage of Hibernate. Okay, there are several advantages of Hibernate, but what is the basic advantage of Hibernate means? If you see the JDBC application, what we do is first we create a connection object. Okay, just those who don't know the JDBC, I am not helpful at this point of time, but that's why I told I have given 2 days time to learn JDBC. If we did not have at least basics of JDBC means I cannot do anything. Okay, those who don't have the basics of JDBC this day, at least try to get them at least for the next day. Okay, in JDBC, in order to interact with the database, first we create a connection object. And connection object is a very expensive object in the sense it eats more memory. It consumes more memory while creating or while existing. Okay, so it consumes more memory, so that the connection object, okay, which acts as a bridge between the database and the Java application. Okay, the connection object acts as a bridge or a channel between the Java application and the database, so it will not be created multiple times, it will be created only once and it is used multiple times. Okay, so in order to do that, we have a concept named connection pooling, where we create a bunch of connection objects and we reuse the same connection objects. Already even we had discussed connection pooling earlier. Okay, in general what we do is we will create a bunch of connection objects and we will reuse the same set of connection objects, that we call as connection pooling. Okay, and then once the connection object is ready, we create either a statement or prepare statement or a callable statement object. Okay, we'll use either of the three, either prepare statement or prepare statement or callable statement. Okay, and by using these objects we perform database interactions. We execute or we trigger database queries. Okay, and result set is used while fetching the information from the database. Okay, we use all these entities to perform database interactions. Okay, and then once all this should be created by us, we should create a connection, we should write the logic to maintain the connection, that is connection pooling, and we should create a statement, prepare statement, callable statement, or when we are fetching the data, let's consider like the data will be in the form of a result set. Okay, the result set should be converted into Java objects by us, that logic also we should write. Okay, while inserting we should convert the information, or inserting or updating we should convert the information from Java object to SQL queries. While fetching, the information will be in the form of a result set, then the result set should be converted again into Java object. Let's consider like there is a person class which has ID and name. In the database also we have table ID and name. We have columns ID and name in the person table. So what we need to do while inserting or updating, this person object information should be converted into, let's consider like person object has ID whose value is 100, name whose value is Ravi. So let's consider like I want to insert the information present in this person object. Then what I need to do? I need to develop a logic where a insert statement is developed. I need to write some logic where this kind of query is created and this kind of query can be executed in JDBC. For JDBC we cannot provide directly the objects, we should definitely provide the queries. Okay, so first the information present in the object, Java object, will be converted into a form of SQL query that we want to execute, and then that SQL query will be executed. But in case of database, okay, in case of frameworks like Hibernate, what we do is we'll configure the columns with Java attributes. We'll configure the Java attribute names with the column names in some configuration files, so that Hibernate itself will pick up the values from the ID and insert into a specific column. We need not to do anything, we need not to generate this kind of queries. Hibernate itself will map the column to the Java attribute and will fetch the value from the Java object and it will insert into the specific column. So there are several flexibility of using a framework, but the primary advantage of using a backend framework, this Hibernate framework is called as a backend framework, or even we call it as a persistence framework. Hibernate is called as, some people call Hibernate as a backend framework and some people call it as a persistence framework. Okay. Now, why this is called as a backend framework means, okay, whatever the database interaction logic in general in any application, either it might be C or C++ or Java or .NET, whatever it might be, okay, in any software application, the code or the code piece or the module, whatever it's called, the code piece that interacts with the database is called as a backend. Frontend means the code piece where the user interacts. Okay, like a JSP page or a HTML page or ASPX page or anything. But the code base with which the database is interacted is called as a backend. So Hibernate is basically a framework which is used to interact with the database. So Hibernate framework is called as a backend framework. Just because the sole purpose of Hibernate is used to interact with the database. So Hibernate is referred to a backend framework. And it is called as persistence framework just because, okay, any data that is permanently saved, or what do we call as persistence means the process of saving some data permanently, that is called as persistence. That persistence can be with the file system or with the database or for any media, for any persistent media. Database is also a persistent media where we can permanently save the information. File system is also a persistent media where we can permanently save the information. Okay, so since we are using this framework to persist something, persist some data into the database, even we call it as a persistence framework. And the primary advantage of using Hibernate is in case of Hibernate, okay, we configure the database properties. Okay, in case of Hibernate, we will configure the database properties like username, password, URL. Okay, all these things can be configurable. The connection pool size. Okay, in order to interact with the database, we should have all these things: username, password, URL, driver class. Those who know JLBC will know all these things better. This is optional, this is not mandatory, but to interact with the database from a Java application, all these things should be provided: username, password, URL, and driver class. Okay, username means what is the username. Okay, password is what is the password. URL means what is the URL of the database that we are interacting. Driver class means what is the driver class which we use to interact with the database. Okay, all these things should be provided, but all these things can be configurable in case of Hibernate. We configure all these details in a XML file. Okay, now is it like we have only one database vendor, or do we have several database vendors? There are several database vendors, like we have Oracle, Teradata, MySQL, SQL Server, Derby, like this, Postgres. We do have several database servers, DB2 is for mainframes. Okay, like this, we do have several database vendors, and the worst thing with that is, okay, each and every database have its own syntax. Except for normal insert or select queries. Each and every database has its own set of data types, its own set of rules, and its own set of syntaxes. The syntaxes of one database with another database is not the same. The rules of one database with another database is not the same. The data types of one database with another database is not the same. Okay, they will be changing from one database vendor to another database vendor. Okay, but if we write the queries in a Java application, what happens? Let's consider like I am developing a product. Okay, I am selling that product. I am developing a banking product, and I am selling that banking product to SBI, ICICI, HDFC, and Citibank. SBI is, let's consider like SBI is using Oracle, ICICI is using SQL Server, Citibank is using Derby database. Now, my application is there where I have developed using a simple JDBC which interacts with all the databases. But in case of JDBC, what we do? We write the queries in the same file where we develop. But let's consider like this query is specific to Oracle. Now a new client comes to me and asks for an application which works better with Derby. Then what I need to do? I need to write some other code, okay, which contains queries which will work with Derby. And let's consider like another client comes and tells that I want SQL Server. I want your application, okay. I want your application to interact my existing SQL Server. See, to buy your application, he should not change the database. He will be using the database for many years, 10 or 15 years. So, you will be selling a product, just because he is buying your product, he should not change the database. He need not to change the database. You will not expect that. Just because if we go for, let's consider like your product supports Oracle. He is already using SQL Server for 15 years. So, just because he is buying your product, he will not buy a new license of Oracle. Why should he buy a new license of Oracle? And he will expect that. Okay, buying a new license is not a big thing. Migrating the data from existing SQL Server to Oracle is a very big thing. It will be a very cost-consuming and time-consuming process. So what he will expect is, he will expect that your application will interact with his existing database, SQL Server database. But you have developed the application which is specific or which contains Oracle queries, Oracle related queries. But they might not be compatible with the SQL Server. Or next consider a new client comes with DB2, but your queries are not compatible with those things. But you need to redevelop the things again and again. But that's the core idea of developing a backend framework like Hibernate. Okay, the core idea is, can't we develop something which acts as an interface? Let's consider like this is our application and this is our database. Okay, can't we develop something which acts as an interface? Okay, and from the application we'll get the information, and from the database also we'll get the information. Let's consider like while updating, we'll get the information from the application to the database. While writing a select query, while fetching the data from the database, we'll get the information from the database to the application. So, Hibernate, the developers of Hibernate have faced many problems like this with multiple databases, and they thought like, why can't we develop some interface? Okay, why can't we develop some interface which interacts with both the database as well as the application. From the application side, it will take the information in form of Java objects, and by a configuration mechanism, it will find what is the database it is interacting to, and it has already written. Okay, it has already written the funder, or it has already written the code to convert that object information, or to convert the information that is present in the object to the queries specific to the database. Let's consider like in Hibernate, we have configured in such a way that my application is interacting with Oracle server. So then what it will do, what Hibernate will do, the information present in the object will be converted into queries that are specific to Oracle. Let's consider like after 2 months or 3 months, I want to convert to DB2. Okay, then do I write any queries in my Java code? Do I write any queries in my Java code? I told that just we create only Java objects. Will that Java objects change from Oracle to DB2 or DB2 SQL Server? Will Java objects change according to the database? No. We'll send the same Java objects, but what Hibernate will do now? Hibernate has already written. Hibernate people has already written some code to convert the information present in the Java object to a database specific queries. Let's consider like we configure after 2 months we configure it to be DB2. Then what Hibernate will do? Okay, it will convert the information present in the Java objects to queries that are specific to DB2. So a simple configuration change, okay, is enough to migrate from one database to another database. That is the core idea of Hibernate. That is the core idea of any backend framework. We can easily switch from one database to another database. That is the very core thing for any backend framework like Hibernate. Switching from one database to another database is very flexible and very easy. Just a configuration change in XML files. Okay. The second advantage is we told like converting the information from Java objects into a SQL query. Okay, like this. Person object has ID with 100 and name with value Ravi. This information should be converted through a code. We should write some code which converts the information in person object to a query which interacts with person table in the database. The information in the person object will be converted into a query that interacts with the person table in the database using our code, using the code that we develop. So we ourselves need to write some code which converts the information present in the person object to the query that interacts with the database. So we should read the information from the person object. We should write the query structure. We should pick up all the tables. We should pick up the table and all the columns and the data types. Okay. We should do some coding on that part. But if you use a framework like Hibernate, we can just configure them in the XML file. So that we'll tell that yes, ID is there in the person object, person underscore ID is there in the person table. So we'll map those things. Okay. Now person class is there. Okay, in the application, and HCO underscore person is there in the database. So we'll map these two things. So the person class will be mapped to database table HCO underscore person. Now in that person class we have 10 attributes. In the database table we have 10 columns. So again individual column level. We will map the ID of the person object to person underscore ID of the database. We'll map the name of the person object to person underscore name of the database. So we need not to convert the object information into SQL queries or from the result set back to Java objects. While fetching, what we'll do, we'll get the result set in the JDBC and we need to render the result set and convert the data in the result set back to the Java objects. Or from the Java objects, we need to render the Java objects, we need to create SQL queries or insert or update queries that interact with the database. All those things we need to do. The conversion of object into a database information. or the conversion of the database information into a Java object. This step should be done by us. This code should be written by us. But this can be configurable if you use a Hibernate. We can just configure, yeah, this class will be configured with this table, okay, and in this class ID will be configured with something, name will be configured with something, and something will be configured with something. That's it. The rest of the thing, if we create a Java object and provide to Hibernate, okay, it will insert the information. Okay, if you write some simple query and provide it to Hibernate, it will fetch the information and it will convert that information to Java objects, and the Java objects will be given to you. Okay, so that kind of flexibility is there with Hibernate. Okay, and there are several advantages. These are the two primary advantages. Okay, interacting with multiple databases, switching from one database to another database is very easy, as well as we can configure the database properties with the Java attributes, and the conversion will be automatically done by Hibernate. Okay, conversion of information from Java objects to SQL queries, or conversion of the result data to Java objects. This will be automatically done by Hibernate. We just need to configure the things. What is the database object and what is the Java object? What is the database property and what is the Java property? That's it. We need to provide those mapping, and the rest of the thing will be done by Hibernate. These two are the basic things where Hibernate is advantageous. And the third thing is, okay, the maintenance of relations. Let's consider like there is one person object which has many addresses. Okay, let's consider like one person can have many addresses, like office address or personal address or permanent address. One person can have several addresses. So in this case, one person can have several addresses. So it is a one-to-many relationship from the person. So one person can have many addresses. Like this, one batch can have many students. One batch can have many students. Can a student attend to many batches? Can a student attend to many batches? If there is a training center, can the student attend to many batches? Yes, there is a possibility. One student can attend to many batches. So the relationship between a student and a batch is a many to many. Okay. Likewise, there are several kind of relations. If we want to maintain these kind of relations using a normal JDBC, it's a very tough thing. Maintenance of these kind of relations using normal JDBC is a very tough thing. But we can maintain these kind of relations. Okay, one to one or one to many or many to many. All these relations can be maintained very easily by just using some configuration using Hibernate. In Hibernate, we can just configure these things like person has many addresses. That's it. That configuration is enough to maintain this relation between those tables. Okay, then the next thing is with the inheritance. Inheritance mappings. So let's consider like person is there, okay, employee is there, and permanent employee is there. Employee is a subclass to person, and permanent employee is a subclass to employee. Let's consider like there are three entities: person, employee, permanent employee. Okay, let's consider like person table is there, employee table is there, and permanent employee table is there. Then person contains the generic information of all the persons, whether he is an employee or not. Employee contains the generic information of all the employees, whether he is a permanent employee or a contract employee or some other employee. Permanent employee contains the information specific to the permanent employee. Then, if person is one table, employee is another table, and permanent employee is another table. If you want to maintain inheritance relationship between database tables, okay, it's very tough using JDBC. Okay, we cannot write like table A extends table B. Is that possible in database? All of you have the knowledge about database, right? Do all of you have knowledge, the basic knowledge about database queries? In any of the database that you have seen, is it possible that we can extend one database table with another? No, like Java programming language, we cannot have inheritance model in database tables. We cannot inherit one database table with another. Okay? But if you use a persistence framework like Hibernate, okay, Hibernate itself will provide a configuration mechanism, okay, to maintain this inheritance model. Okay, Hibernate itself will maintain, okay, the inheritance model in the database level. Databases by default they don't have an inheritance, but Hibernate acts as a media or a layer, and it will perform, it will establish some inheritance relationship between the tables. Virtual inheritance relationships. They are not actual inheritance relationships, but virtually Hibernate will maintain that inheritance relationships between the data of multiple tables. Understood? Inheritance means, let's consider like person information is there, employee information is there, permanent employee information is there. Okay, let's consider that everything is in the same table. What happens? The complexity will be increased. Let's consider like employee is there and labor is there. So labor need not to have the employee related columns. So employee will be in one table, person will be in one table, labor will be in one table, and permanent employee will be another table. But making a link between these two tables is not that much easy in normal SQL queries or normal database. But Hibernate has a configuration mechanism which can link these tables through an inheritance relationship. It's not actual inheritance relationship. Virtually Hibernate will maintain. Hibernate will think that yes, this table is a sub to this table. This table is a parent to this table. Virtually Hibernate will think, will configure in such a way so that Hibernate will think these two tables are inherited and will link the information in those tables.
So this is primary key and foreign key.
It internally uses primary key and foreign key. For any relation in database level, we should use a foreign key. Without foreign key, we cannot establish relations. Either the relation is inheritance, or the relation is one to many, many to many, or one to one. For any relation in database level can be achieved only through one way. That is a foreign key. Okay, either it is inheritance relationship or any other relationship. But for us in Java level, inheritance is one kind of relationship, and like has is another kind of relationship. We do have different kinds of relationships. Like is inheritance relationship, has is association relationship. But in case of database level, we don't have that separation. Any relation has to be done through the foreign keys only. Okay, but virtually Hibernate will maintain that yes, this relation, this foreign key is a inheritance relation. Okay, this foreign key is a one-to-one relation. Hibernate will maintain some kind of virtual relationship and will develop the queries as per that. Okay, but for us, what it happens? Okay, person is there, which is a superclass. Employees is there, which is a subclass. Okay, and person information will go to person, employee information will go to person, employee. Okay, but how it will be done means Hibernate will split them. Okay, whatever the employee object will be there, employee object will contain even the person information. What Hibernate will do? Hibernate will split that information, person information from the employee object and put into person table. It will split the employee information and put into employee table. It will split the permanent employee information and put into permanent employee table. But if you want to do that process manually through some code, it's a little bit typical. Okay? And the next and the best thing of, one of the best things of Hibernate is the cache management. Cache management. Let's consider that there are 1,000 users of my application. Okay, I have configured. Let's consider there is a web page where I display list of countries and list of states. Okay, I have displayed the list of countries and list of states. Okay, now there are, let's consider there are 10,000 users in the application. Okay, will the list of countries change for one user to another user? Will the list of countries change from one user to another user? Let's consider like 1,000 users has logged into the same application, and for 1,000 users, for each and every user, some database transaction will happen. Let's consider like for the first user, the database transaction happens and it will fetch the information from the country table and the state table, and it will fill the information in the dropdown. If it is done for all the 10,000 users, is it a repetitive thing? See, the information is the same. Information will not be varied from user to user. But what we are doing, for each and every user, we are fetching the information from the database. Will it be a repetitive kind of thing? Yes or no? Yes, definitely it is a repetitive thing. If the data is the same, okay, for the same data, for different users, we are interacting with the database again and again. But rather than doing that, what in Hibernate we can do means, we can fetch the we can configure the information, we can configure it in such a way that, okay, we can configure that in such a way that, okay, we can fetch the information once and we'll put in a cache. Cache means, in software terminology, cache is a temporary memory. Okay, what Hibernate will do means, it will put fetch we can specify that yes, these things should be maintained in the cache. Then what Hibernate will do? Hibernate will fetch the information from the database and puts it in the cache. So if the second user comes and requests for the same information, Hibernate will not interact with the database. Hibernate first will check in the cache. If the information is there in the cache, it will directly pull up from the cache. So the number of database interactions have been reduced like anything. The database interactions are reduced, the database traffic will be reduced, and the performance of other interactions will increase. Understood? So this kind of cache management can be easily done through some configuration using Hibernate. Hibernate already have developed some code to maintain the cache, just will use that through some configuration. Okay? Cache management is one of the best things of Hibernate. How we can manage a cache? All those things. And even batch processing is very simple. We can do it using a configuration. Even batch processing is very simple in Hibernate. So these are several advantages using Hibernate. But even there are some disadvantages also if you use Hibernate. Now, if you use JDBC, what happens? In JDBC, we will create a connection. We create a statement. In the statement, we will directly write the query, and the query will be directly executed. In case of Hibernate, what happens? We will create Java objects. Hibernate, what it will do? Convert Java objects into queries, and that queries will be executed. Did you find any difference here? Which one will perform better? Definitely JDBC. Just because JDBC has direct queries will be directly executed. But what Hibernate should do? Hibernate should render the Java, it should try to map the things, it should render the information, it should create the queries, and the queries will be executed. So performance wise, JDBC is the best. When compared, not even Hibernate, when compared to any other persistence framework, JDBC will perform the best for database interactions using Java. But JDBC will not provide the kind of flexibilities with Hibernate. If you want flexibility, then we should compromise with some performance. Definitely. JDBC definitely it's the best performer. But if you want to have the flexibilities of Hibernate, we should compromise a bit with performance. That's the disadvantage of Hibernate. Okay? When compared to JDBC, the performance is a bit less. So, for that reason, even for some of the banking applications or financial applications, still they are using JDBC only. Just because it is a better performer. If they have no intention to change the database for next 12 or next 20 years, if they don't have any plan to change the database for next 20 years, definitely they will use JDBC only. Just because it is the best performer. But there are scenarios where Hibernate can be used for this kind of requirement, for all these advantages. Okay? If their requirements matches with these advantages, then they will go for Hibernate. It's not like which is best or which is worst. It depends upon the requirement. Okay? If they can take the risk of writing the queries in their applications, okay, and if they can take the risk that they will not be changing the database for next at least for 10 years, they can directly use JDBC rather than going for Hibernate. But the development effort will be more, the maintenance effort will be more, but they'll have more performance. If they can compromise a bit with performance, if they use Hibernate, the development efforts will be reduced, the maintenance efforts will be reduced. Okay, so if they want to convert from one database to another database, then at that time the risk will be reduced. Okay, they have some advantages of using Hibernate. So it completely depends upon their requirements, their technical requirements, the client's technical requirements. Okay, thus the basic how and what Hibernate will do. Tomorrow class we'll start with a basic application of Hibernate. Okay, how we can start with, where we can configure the things, where we can configure the database credentials like username, password and all, where we can map the Java objects to database tables and Java properties to database columns, and how we can insert the data, how we can fetch the data, how we can update the data. All these things that we'll discuss tomorrow. Okay, we'll start with actual Hibernate coding tomorrow. Okay, but again and again I am reminding, to have a better knowledge of Hibernate, try to get the basics of JDBs. That's more important. Okay? We'll end up for the day. And tomorrow class will be at 6 as scheduled. Just because as you guys have requested that the class should end up at 8, I'm preponing the class to begin at 6. So tomorrow class will be at 6. Inform Buddha. Anyhow, we will be bringing the key, right? So just inform that I will be coming at 6 and bring the key.